So this is another recording of this. I wanted to explain through this because all of these things are going to work probably a little differently than, obviously, a little differently than the original game did. So, we're going to talk about guard first. Guards in this game guards are skilled at making enemies vulnerable and applying physical statuses. They're good damage dealers. This makes sense, I guess, for this game, because what guards were in the original game, whereas in the original game, yes, they were just kind of like status dealers and they're general damage dealers. But guards in Arknights are they're really good at damage dealing. They're probably the overall highest damage dealing class in the game, I think. I'm trying to remember all the classes off the top of my head. Probably alongside Caster. But guards in the original they quite a few variants. The most notable for me was either the guards that were just meant to be like less bulky but much higher damage dealing tanks. They usually had a lot of health, not as much defense, but they usually had a lot of health. Characters that come to mind are like Sidoroka, and we didn't know if that's the only one I can think off the top of my head. There were also like double damage dealing guards, which were ones that hit twice. It usually had lots of piercing effects or large range effects, like Cutter and why can't I remember her name? My brain is telling me Ibis, but it's a different bird. Shit, I have pictures of her on my phone. Why don't I remember her name? She has a lantern and a gun. That's all I can remember off the top of my head. A lantern, a gun, and a lance. And she was released alongside of like the water enemies, the ones that like infect the area around them. It was that event. Anyways, and the other type of guards were the semi-melee. They had melee attacks in front of them, but they had a slightly wider range from which they could deal ranged attacks. So sometimes they were 3 spots out in front of them, or 2 spots out in front of them. So you could have like an actual defender in front of them, and they'd still be able to attack the enemies in front of the defender. So that was a really, really good class to have. It was very, very widespread, very good to have on your team, especially in later game stuff. Casters are skilled at applying arts inflictions and arts reactions. They're good damage, also good damage dealers. Yeah, so this makes sense since considering the original in Arknights, Caster and Guard were probably the biggest damage dealers. The difference was that these guys did arts damage. Combustion, electrification, solidification, and corrosion. Interesting. Those from the enemy. 4 elements of arts inflictions. Up to 4 stacks of arts inflictions at the same time. Okay, so I'll probably be able to look through all this stuff at some point. Yeah, there's a lot to look through. Stacking triggers heat burst. Yeah, it's just you have to stack the element of teams. In the original game, casters were mostly just they were the main alongside the rangers. They were the ranged class, and they usually were different in the fact that they usually had lower attack speeds, but dealt damage directly, meaning they dealt damage not based on the enemy's defense, but on their resistance, which usually was not only something that most like enemies don't really have, especially most characters don't really have any arts resistance, but it was also a percentage instead of defense, which was more like a flat amount. I can't remember exactly what the damage calculation was. Striker I'll get back to because I don't know what that is, because that's not in the game as far as I remember. It might have been added somewhat recently, but I don't recognize Striker. Vanguard, greater recovering skill points to help the team is skill casting. Correct. That is pretty close to the original Vanguard. Vanguards are, I keep saying were. Vanguards are probably the simplest class. It's literally just the stuff you put out first. They usually had the lowest action point cost. Is it action point? No, deployment point. Where am I getting action point from? Probably something else. But they usually had by far the lowest costs. My favorite to use was always Fang because you had some of the best, especially for the fact that she was only a 3-star. She had some of the best overall defensive stats, especially for one you get for free. But Fang only had like at max potential, even at max level, which increasing your elite status increases the cost of the character. Even at the max elite status, she only costs like 7 deployment points, which usually start with like 8 or 9, sometimes up to 20, depending on which thing you're in. They were just meant to get immediately out there. They did some decent damage. They weren't super great at anything offensively or defensively, but what their main thing was is that they were usually really good at generating skill points. Characters like Vigna were gain skill points when they killed an enemy, and they would just gain skill points from doing that, or they give you deployment points for doing that. And then you had ones like Fang or lower leveled characters, high level characters like Siege, where every so often their main skill was just that every so often they just gave you skill points. Or I keep calling them skill points. They're skill points in this game, but they're deployment points in the other thing, which was the cost required to put a character on the field. Remember, the original game is a tactical game. It's grid. It's Fire Emblem, but it's tower defense. What was I going to say? Yeah, so this is pretty close to what they were. So this is just they give you skill points. Defenders are extremely tough. They're skilled at protecting and treating their teammates as well as counterattacking the enemy. So this is pretty much the same, but it seems it's more like Defender seems to be a mix between Defender and Medic. Which, I mean, fair enough. Yeah, might as well make it one type of thing. So yeah, that's cool, actually. So this makes sense. Defenders were usually somewhat middling attack stats, but incredible defense and often sometimes pretty good HP to go along with it. Most defenders were primarily just, you sit them on the field in front of your characters and then they just don't die. That's the whole point. There are characters who with incredibly high block, as well as on average defenders had a block of 3. There were some characters like Quota, who I've actually had on this channel before as a little mini video you can find. It's actually one of my older shorts, actually, when I actually started making shorts. She is a defender that has a base of 3. She has really good defense and HP, but what's best is her second ability she gets after her first elite promotion, where she gets an ability where, when activated, not only I'm pretty sure it literally doubles her defense, but also makes her gain 2% of her HP a second. She gets healed 2% HP a second, and it increases her block by 1, so she's able to block 4 enemies at a time. It's really good. A lot of defenders only had a single small spot, unlike most characters, which took up their attack range was the spot they were sitting in, and then one spot in front of them. Defenders most often had just the spot they were sitting in. So an enemy had to be blocking an enemy to attack it, or an enemy had to be passing through them. Like enemies that can actually move, they aren't able to be blocked. So this obviously isn't able to have any of that. So instead, just like max out their defense and also make a lot of them probably HP or like healing as well. So this is cool. So they also do counterattacks, which is interesting. Supporter is a very confusing role in the original Arknights. So what does this do? Supporters are skilled in applying various control effects that weaken the enemy. They can also buff and support their enemies. So basically, this is just general support, I guess. So like actually what a supporter is. Supporter in Arknights was kind of... It's hard to explain it in any single word. Unlike the other ones, it's pretty easy. Guard is attack. Caster is attack but magic. Vanguard is... What's the word I would use? I used to use a word. Economy? I guess I could say that. Economy works. Defender is defender. They're tank. Supporter was always confusing. There were a lot of supporters were just kind of like arts. They're just casters, but they had the extra effect of slowing the enemy down. There are a lot that can attack, but they can also be swapped into healing every so often. So they were kind of like characters that could deal damage, but if you were having issues with healing, you could switch them to do that under certain circumstances. You had characters with really unique effects, like one of my favorites, which was fuck. It's been so long since I played it. There's a lot of names I just can't think of off the top of my head. There's a character that doesn't attack or do anything actively. While on the field, she just kind of constantly heals everyone in her radius by a certain amount per second. Um, and then you have like an enhanced state that just makes her heal more. There's another state that did something else. I can't remember I can't remember what the first one was actually. The second one was just massively increasing the amount she gives. She also gives a constant buff to everyone in her radius, and that ability that was also permanent once it was activated would give massive buffs. And then there was another one that just switched her from that to dealing constant true damage to everyone in her radius, or to all enemies in her radius, which was interesting. I never used that third one though. I only ever used the second one. I loved having that insane, basically passive healing. I can't remember any other supporters off the top of my head, but it was kind of like that. So here they're just kind of like Star Rail's Harmony class. So they just kind of do the basic support stuff. But they also seem to have mixed in the nihility of that game in here as well, where they do debuffs as well to enemies. So hold on, there's one last thing I have to look at, which is Striker. Strikers exploit physical or arts effects inflicted by other operators to deal decisive damage. Fascinating. So these are characters that more actively exploit the effects inflicted by other operators. Huh. That's very interesting. That feels more like a thing that would happen under certain circumstances from just other characters. Having that as an entire class is very interesting. I'm very curious to see about that in the future. I don't think I have any in here. Yeah, it's 2 guards, a caster, and a other thing.
Still waiting for something?
It's very interesting. Huh. So yeah, Striker's not a thing that I can remember in Arknights. So I don't know what to compare that to. That's very... Star Rail doesn't have anything like that. It was just like obviously there's characters that do that type of stuff, but there's never been a class for that. Nihility would be the closest, but like never in the same way. And then there are the characters that like Zani that I can think of from Wuthering Waves, who after when a
Operator Protocol.
Watch this.
Wind speed's okay?
What?
Still waiting for something? Operator Protocol.
Watch this. Awesome, right?
Wind speed's okay? Visibility's good. Perfect weather for snowboarding.
Watch this. Awesome, right?
Operator, still waiting for something? Operator Protocol. Standing by. Still waiting for something? Operator Protocol. Standing. Still waiting for something? Originium will carve a path for us. Prepped and ready to go. Originium will carve a path for us. and ready to go. Prepped and ready to go.
Over here, Edmund.
Wonderful performance, and it's also usable in extreme environments. Waiting for your orders, Administrator. Endman, you're here. A new field mission? I'm totally ready. I'll protect everyone. Wonderful performance, and it's also usable in extreme environments. The one who made this really gave it a lot of thought. I've been exercising really hard. These records offer valuable references. Wait. These records offer valuable references. They give me plenty of ideas for future SAR operations.
Originium will carve a path for us.
Prepped and over here, Edmund!
Prepped and ready to go.
Originium will carve a path for us.
Wanna come snowboarding with me?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect weather for snow.
Mm-hmm.